everyone. Welcome to Resistance Live for the 30th of May, 2025. It is the 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump being convicted of 34 counts of various issues related to election fraud in the 2016 election. And here we are. What a difference a year makes. All right. Today, for our visually challenged viewers, I'm wearing a white V-neck t-shirt. My hair is pulled back. I'm a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty, blonde-haired woman. And I am sitting, as always, in front of my bookshelf and my yellow utility cart. And I'm coming to you from occupied Muncie, Lenape, and Mohican land. Okay, today we are talking about Elon Musk. And part of this is because there has been, as we talked about a little bit earlier on in the week, this incredible run-up of news articles about Elon Musk being sad about all the damage that all the murder he's committed has done to his reputation. And today, Trump is having a press conference with Elon Musk at the White House. Now, conveniently enough, this morning, the New York Times had 2 articles about Elon Musk and the damage that he's done, and about him personally. The first was an opinion piece from Michelle Goldberg about the fact that 300,000 people are estimated to have died already from the cuts in international aid that Elon Musk was able to effect through his work at Doge. This includes children who are starving, people with HIV in Africa, babies who have been infected with HIV because the mothers who were carrying them did not have access to HIV drugs, and on and on and on it goes. So I personally don't have terrible amounts of empathy for Elon Musk being sad or losing his business reputation. But I also want to warn you all of something that I said yesterday, which is that Elon is not going to be completely gone no matter what they say and no matter what happens this afternoon. Because we know that he's got the ear of Donald Trump. We know that he has a direct line of relevance to this president. And even though there are signs that he is starting to be thrown under the bus, that hasn't happened yet. And on top of it, we know that there is an extremely strong likelihood that he is exiting with all of our data. And so keep in mind, Doge continues to exist. Those individuals are now implanted inside the executive branch, unfortunately. And on top of it, all the big tech efforts of which Elon Musk is a part, including efforts by Palantir, that's one of Peter Thiel's companies, to create a database of all Americans that allows them to monitor all of our activities. And the folks who have backed up J.D. Vance as vice president, and all of the efforts that are currently underway by Meta, for instance, to embed their technology into military helmets for surveillance purposes. All of these things still continue. And Elon is very much a part of them with all of his billions of dollars of government contracts and also just his interpersonal relationships inside the White House and near to it. Simultaneously to that this morning, however, the New York Times, through Megan Twohy, who many of you remember broke the Harvey Weinstein stories originally, she and a colleague wrote a piece about Elon Musk's rabid drug use. Now, there were some people on Blue Sky who were like, oh, there was reporting on Elon's drug use last year. Yes, I know that. This is very different. This is reporting about what drugs he took on the campaign trail, where, how he carried them around, that he was doing them in multiple cities while the Trump campaign was underway, including international stops, and that he was carrying around with him a drug box that had ketamine, various other drugs, Ozempic inside it, and that he was sometimes taking up to 20 pills a day. Apparently, he was taking so much ketamine that he has now lost control of his bladder in some instances, which is a sign of ketamine addiction and abuse. And this is the person who was put in charge of, slashing government. None of it is good. The piece also concerns, all of his various brood of breeding women and the scandals that have erupted from that, and his at least 14 children that we know about, and how he was having to manage all of that on the campaign trail. And it all will leave a very foul taste in your mouth. One of the things that I just want people to think about, though, because somebody asked me for an update today, because we talked yesterday about the very salacious nature of the Katie and Stephen Miller saga in relation to Elon Musk. One of the things that I will just point out here, though, excuse me, because we talked about yesterday, Stephen Miller was really going at Elon Musk on X the other night, and very aggressively angry. At the same time that all of these rumors, which have now been picked up by like the Daily Mail and are being like broadcast internationally about Elon Musk stealing Stephen Miller's wife, started to become more public. And again, I have to say that's all speculation. We do know she's leaving the government to go work with him, quote unquote. But nonetheless, okay, we don't know the exact nature of that relationship. However, I am going to point out something, okay? In order to have the kind of information, like the level of detail that is reported in this article by Megan Twohy and her colleague in the New York Times, you would have to be somebody who was actually traveling with Elon Musk on the Trump campaign regularly, from city to city, from stop to stop, with enough personal contact with Elon Musk to even know there was such a thing as a drug box. And I don't know who it was. But I'm going to tell you, if Elon Musk had walked away with my wife, I might want to tell the New York Times about his rabid drug use as an act of revenge. So again, speculative on my part, but I'm going to tell you, we don't know who these anonymous sources are, and whoever they are very high up in the Trump administration. It's wild. So in any event, we're going to have this presser this afternoon at the White House. I think it's going to go totally off the rails because in addition to the fact that Trump's probably likely to be asked about President Taco again, as we talked about yesterday, my suspicion is that there's going to be a lot of questions, if they're allowed, which they may not be, about Musk's drug use and his breeding and his influence and all the people who have died as a result of what he's done. I don't think you should get a minute of sleep, frankly. And I'll also just say that, the crimes against humanity that have been perpetrated by Doge are things that hopefully will at some point be prosecuted. I'm going to remind you all, by the way, also that if we take back the House next year, all sorts of investigations can ensue about what has really gone down in the last 6 months. Okay, we have to talk about a big Supreme Court case that came down this morning. This was a case, again, where this is the habit of the Trump administration now, where they seek a stay from the Supreme Court of a lower court ruling while the case is being litigated on the merits. This particular case concerns 500,000 individuals who were given temporary protected status by the Biden administration while their immigration claims were processed. And the Supreme Court this morning, in a 7-2 decision, Justice Jackson wrote the dissent and was joined by Sotomayor. The Supreme Court allowed Trump to continue deporting these people, notwithstanding the protected status that had been granted to them by the Biden administration. So 500,000 people's lives just got completely upended. These are people who have applied for asylum or are in the immigration process. And the Supreme Court just said, nope, you just start sending them back to Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador and everywhere else. It's terrible. Again, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't know why Elena Kagan wasn't joined in that dissent. That struck me as very odd. But nonetheless, it's not a great ruling. On the flip side, because we have to talk about this from time to time here, yesterday we spent the whole broadcast talking about this ruling out of the U.S. Court of International Trade that stopped Trump's tariffs in their tracks. And I explained to you all yesterday in great detail that the U.S. Court of International Trade, from the U.S. Court of International Trade, the appeals go to the Federal Circuit, which is a topic-specific, subject-specific court with nationwide jurisdiction. Well, lo and behold, yesterday, Trump's administration did the same thing. And they went to the Federal Circuit and said, we're going to appeal this ruling by the U.S. Court of International Trade. We're asking for a temporary stay. And the Federal Circuit granted the temporary stay. Now, hold on a second, because this is an administrative stay, which is very different than what happened in front of the Supreme Court. This is merely a stay that says, but from the Federal Circuit, we're staying the lower court's ruling just as long as it takes us to consider whether or not we're going to hear this appeal. Okay. And that's it. That's it. So this is not like a permanent stay of the ruling that stopped Trump's tariffs. And it's not something that is going to be like on the merits of whether or not Trump broke the law, as we talked about yesterday. This is slightly different. And those of you who've been here for a while know that administrative stays are very common. There is nothing at all unusual about this. It's not an indicator that the Federal Circuit is going to rule in favor of him. This is a procedural action. And so nobody should be freaking out about it. Now, again, I just have to say a couple of things about this, right? Because people were like asking me on the Patreon feed. And reminder, if you want to ask me questions, you can head on over there and become a subscriber for as little as $5 a month. One of the things that folks were asking about was like, well, what happens to the money? Well, nothing. And the reason for that is because this is an action that is for injunctive relief. And I'm going to remind you all, injunctive relief is going to a court and asking them to stop something or to make somebody do something. Okay. It's not an action for monetary damages. All right. So this is merely a stage in the appeals process, and nobody should kind of be losing their minds about it. I know there were people who were very worried about it, but you don't really have a reason to be, because there's not any ruling on the merits. We're not in a different position now than we were on, say, Tuesday. All right. It does mean that the court's going to look at the appeal and decide what to do. All right. The other thing that came up legally yesterday was that Trump's legal team in this case against CBS, where they've alleged that 60 Minutes doctored Kamala Harris's interview. I'm so tired of this case, by the way. I mean, it's just so stupid. Every single interview is edited, right? I mean, this is dumb. But apparently, Trump's lawyers claim that he experienced emotional distress from watching the Kamala Harris interview, which is horseshit. And I just have to point out to people that emotional distress claims require a plaintiff to be evaluated by a psychiatric professional who will then opine on the nature of the emotional distress and, generally speaking, attest to that emotional distress in a manner that would support a monetary damages award. That's not going to happen here. Trump is not going to allow himself to be evaluated by a psychiatrist or a psychologist who will then testify in court that he was emotionally damaged by Kamala Harris being interviewed on 60 Minutes. The whole thing is really stupid. But I do want to clarify something here, because there was some confusion this morning on the Patreon feed about emotional distress versus mental competency. Okay. Claiming that you were traumatized by something is not the same thing as being mentally incompetent. All right. There is no through line here that leads to an argument based on what he said in court that he is not competent to be the president. Now, we're not going to discuss that, because we all see what we see and hear what we hear and know what we know. But for the person who is asking, does this create a situation where he could be impeached for being unable to carry out his duties, or the 25th Amendment could be justified? No, it is not that kind of a situation, right? People file emotional distress claims all the time from, let's say, like car accidents, or when they sue a doctor for malpractice, right? That doesn't mean the person is thereby mentally incompetent such that they can't do their job. It just means that they've experienced emotional distress, trauma. They may need therapy. They may need medication. Very, very different kind of lay of the land legally. And again, I have to remind you, nobody's going to be impeached unless we take back the House. And even then, we have to have a 2/3 majority in the Senate for conviction. So all eyes on the 2026 midterms if what you're after is impeachment, because nothing like that's going to take place until we have the House back. Okay. There's a lot more going on today on the immigration front. Lots of ICE flights overnight. Avello Airlines has painted all their planes white right now that are being used as a part of ICE Air so that their brand isn't any further harmed, which is in and of itself very twisted. There were private flights going to Senegal and elsewhere, Vietnam, Laos, other places, over the last 48 hours that are assumed to be additional deportation flights. I just have to point out, like in the case of the flight to Senegal, they think there was one person on that plane. And you have to ask yourself, truly, if we're talking about government waste, about the cost of a private jet flight from Texas to Senegal and back again to deport one individual. The other thing I just want to mention to everybody is that there was some news yesterday out of, I believe, Axios that determined that of the 230 odd men who were deported to CCOT in those El Salvador flights, only 30 of them had ever been accused of a crime. And that the Trump administration knew that when they sent all of those innocent people to that concentration camp. I just have to say, I still have these moments daily where I'm like, our Nuremberg style trials are coming. It may not be next month or next year or 5 years, but they're coming. And this I don't know. As a former human rights lawyer, I look at that and I'm like, man, that is a knockdown, drag out, locked down case for violations of customary international law. Again, we'll have to see what happens there. But again, these people are imprisoned in a slave labor camp with no due process, being accused of no crime because Trump and Stephen Miller ordered ICE to send them there with no legal basis. And it's really sick and sad and awful. So take that for what you will. There's breaking news on the immigration front like day in and day out. One thing I want to just mention again, by the way, I meant to mention this when we were talking about the International Court of Trade. There was an additional ruling yesterday from a lone district court that also ruled that Trump's actions in terms of setting tariffs were unconstitutional. That case has not yet been appealed. And so that case right now does have a temporary injunction in place, also stopping the tariff. So as always, with all of this stuff with regard to Trump's EOs and Trump's policies, there are multiple things happening in multiple courts around the country. Again, I'm going to remind everybody, because I get asked at least once a day about this. If you want to check the status of any particular form of litigation, go to the Just Security Litigation Tracker. They're literally tracking every single case against the Trump administration and filling in updates on that on a daily basis. And you can search the litigation tracker for the case that you're interested in learning about by topic, not just by the caption. And so that's super helpful if you are interested in checking in on that. Okay. That's it for today. For our Patreon subscribers, there will be a bonus broadcast this afternoon, by which time I think the Musk Trump thing is going to be over. And we'll have plenty to talk about there. But if you want to join us at 3 p.m. Eastern, we will be having a progressive coffee hour where you can ask me anything, but also we'll be talking about additional looming events on Fridays in Trumpland. And you can join that by becoming a subscriber over at patreon.com/resistancelive. Also, please don't forget that you can download our guide on how to lead change where you live. It's already in the show notes, and I'll drop it in the comments to figure out how you can make a difference in this very difficult time. And don't forget to like and subscribe and comment and all that good stuff to tell the algorithm here on YouTube that you like what we're doing. Many thanks to our paid subscribers that make this work possible. I'm very grateful for all of you, both on Patreon and here on YouTube. And I will catch you all on Tuesday at regular time. We do have another training video coming on Monday about how to find your purpose and use it to make a difference in the world. So that one should be fun. All right. I will see you all either this afternoon for our Patreon subscribers or next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care. Bye.